The Australian government has officially signed a death warrant for 45 of its military helicopters. Destruction, not donation. At a time when Kyiv is desperately pleading for any transport assets to save soldiers' lives on the front lines, Canberra has chosen to chop these multi-billion-dollar assets into scrap metal and bury them in the ground. This is a logistical scandal that has slapped the face of the international defense community. The decision to annihilate the MRH-90 Taipan fleet is not just an issue of wasted national budget, but a brutal statement that for Australia, sending this equipment to Ukraine is considered more dangerous than erasing it from existence. The world now asks with a cynical tone, why is a nation as wealthy as Australia so heartless in refusing to help its ally with equipment that is sitting right in front of them? The answer is hidden in the dark history of this helicopter, a story of high-tech ambition turning into an endless operational nightmare. To understand why Australia despises this helicopter enough to destroy it, we must dissect the anatomy of the MRH-90 Taipan's failure, known globally as the NH-90. Initially, this helicopter was marketed by a European consortium as the pinnacle of 21st century tactical transport aviation. On paper, the specifications were every Air Force's dream. Full digital fly-by-wire flight control systems, lightweight yet incredibly strong anti-corrosion composite materials, and advanced avionics promising dominance in all weather conditions. However, the reality on the ground for the Australian Army was the exact opposite. Since it first landed on the continent, the Taipan has been a walking disaster that constantly drained the emotions of technicians and the national defense budget without providing the expected results. The list of inherent defects and technical issues haunting this fleet is long and fatal. Australian military technicians discovered various design errors that defied common sense, ranging from cargo doors designed too narrow, preventing soldiers from using machine guns for self-protection during hot zone landings, to cabin floors that were not strong enough to withstand the full combat weight of infantry troops, and even rotor blades prone to cracking. The problems didn't stop there. The helicopter's computer system often suffered sudden errors endangering flights, and corrosion issues appeared much faster than the manufacturer claimed. As a result, the Taipan fleet spent more time parked dead in workshops under long-term maintenance than flying to protect national sovereignty. Its flight costs ballooned to tens of thousands of dollars per hour, an absurd figure for a medium-class transport helicopter. Australia seemed trapped owning a luxury sports car that broke down every day, yet the monthly service cost was equivalent to buying a brand new car. The tipping point for this technical chaos arrived in July 2023 during the massive Talisman Sabre military exercise. A Taipan crashed into the Sea of Queensland during a night training mission, instantly killing 4 of Australia's best military officers. This tragedy was not just an ordinary accident, it was the death knell for the entire fleet. Australian government, fed up with technical issues for a decade, and now having lost soldiers' lives, immediately took extreme measures, permanently grounding the entire Taipan fleet that very day, cancelling maintenance contracts, and deciding never to fly them again. For Canberra, the Taipan was officially deemed a dangerous item, unfit for the sky. Amidst this moment of national mourning and anger, Ukraine came knocking. Lieutenant General Kyrylo Budanov of Ukrainian intelligence sent a very pragmatic official request to the Australian government. Ukraine, facing a massive invasion, did not have the luxury of caring about strict peacetime safety standards like Australia. They needed helicopters for medical evacuation on the front lines. Kyiv's logic was simple and piercing. Give them to us. If they are broken, we will fix them ourselves. If they cannot fly, we will cannibalize the engines for spare parts to keep other helicopters alive. For Ukraine, the technical risk of boarding a Taipan was far smaller than letting their soldiers bleed out in trenches due to a lack of air evacuation. However,
The Australian Department of Defence had 3 deadlocked reasons for flatly rejecting the donation option, despite strong public pressure. The first reason was the restoration cost trap. Defense officials asserted reviving the Taipan fleet, whose airworthiness certificates had already been revoked, would require massive tax money. To send them to Ukraine legally, Australia would have to perform a total overhaul, replace expired components, and conduct retesting that would take months. The government deemed it unethical to waste Australian public funds repairing scrap metal they had already judged as failures, only to give it to another country for free. The destruction strategy was seen as the most budget-efficient option to close the book on this issue forever. The second reason was reputation and safety risk. Within military circles, the moral burden of duty of care is very high. If they sent these defective helicopters to Ukraine and one crashed due to engine failure while carrying wounded soldiers, Australia would be blamed by the world. They did not want to be accused of sending dangerous goods under the guise of humanitarian aid. Australia chose to swallow material losses and sharp criticism rather than bear the moral risk of being accused of harming an ally with broken equipment. The third reason was the move-on logistic strategy. The Australian Army wanted to sever all ties with the Taipan's past and transition to the US H-60M Black Hawk made in the United States, legendary for its toughness. By destroying the Taipans as quickly as possible, Australia could clear out warehouse space and focus all their technicians on maintaining the Blackhawks. Keeping the Taipan carcasses intact, even just to wait for shipment to Ukraine, meant burdening their logistics with unwanted items. As this script is written, the decommissioning process of the Taipan fleet is proceeding systematically and permanently. Vital components are stripped, and the airframes that were once high-value assets are now ending up as industrial waste buried in the ground. However, this decision to destroy has opened the Australian government's eyes to another asset that will also soon retire, the Tiger ARH attack helicopter. The fate of the Tiger seems likely to be different because it has a much fiercer role compared to the Taipan. If the Taipan was merely a transport helicopter prone to issues, the Tiger is a true offensive combat machine. This helicopter is ready for battle, armed with a 30mm cannon, rockets, and lethal Hellfire anti-tank missiles. Just like the Taipan, Australia's Tiger fleet also has a history of complex maintenance and expensive costs. They are also scheduled to retire and be replaced by Apache helicopters. But this time, its fate may not end in a landfill. Recent reports from credible defense media like Army Recognition and the Defense Post state that Australia is now seriously considering donating the Tiger helicopters to Ukraine. Why has their attitude changed 180 degrees compared to the Taipan case? First, because of its combat value. Ukraine faces thousands of enemy tanks and armored vehicles. Attack helicopters like the Tiger are offensive weapons that can change the course of battle. Its strategic value is far higher than a broken transport helicopter. The second is the factor of political redemption. Australia is aware that its image was tarnished by the news of the Taipan burial. The world sees them as rigid and wasteful. By giving the Tigers, Australia can restore its good name as a solid Western ally. This is a smart solution. They dispose of old helicopters without destruction costs, and Ukraine gets the lethal weapons it desperately needs. Of course, challenges remain. Ukrainian pilots must learn to fly the complex Tiger systems, and Australia must obtain export permission from the original manufacturers in Europe. But the goodwill is now on the table. The difference in fate between the buried Taipan and the potentially donated Tiger teaches us one brutal thing about modern war. Not all weapons are created equal. The Taipan was discarded because it was a liability, a troublesome burden. The Tiger is being retained and offered because it's an asset, a lethal weapon. Australia has taken a difficult path. They dared to admit past procurement mistakes with the Taipan, swallowing trillions in losses and burying them for the sake of future safety. On the other hand, they are trying to adapt to world geopolitics through the Tiger. In the end, The mounds of earth covering the Taipan carcasses in Australia become silent witnesses that in a battle of life and death, technological sophistication means nothing without reliability. Sometimes strength is not about who has the most expensive weapon, but who is brave enough to throw away the broken ones and replace them with what is effective.